Adult fantasy is boring. Bite me, Tolkien. What's up, book nerds? I'm Lucky's Universe, and in this week's video, we are going to be talking about New Adult, or NA, which is an emerging genre of fiction that's caused quite the stir in the literary circles. So without further ado, let's get into it. First of all, what is genre? Let's break it down. In the context of books, genre is the category assigned to a literary work. There are a lot of elements that can define a book's genre: tone, style, content, etc. When deciding the genre of a text, it usually starts with an encompassing umbrella genre, which can then be subdivided into more specific genres. When you really get into it, you can just keep going and going until classifying a book becomes akin to getting sucked into a YouTube black hole, and before you know it, you blink and it's 3 a.m. But how did genres even come about? Well, like most things in our society, some old white guy did it 1,000 years ago and now it's a rule. Our good mate Aristotle, in all his infuriatingly male privilege glory, started categorizing shit, and then everyone jumped on the trend and boom, genres invented. I'm sure it's much more complex than that, but I don't really want to give Aristotle that much screen time. He and I aren't on the best of terms since the whole, condoning slavery thing. Anyways, that's the basic version of what genre is. Today, I'm going to be talking about genres that specifically fiction books get put into. Non-fiction books are a beast for another battle. Fiction is usually divided into umbrella categories by age: children's, young adult, adults, and then placed into subgenres like romance, fantasy, thriller, and so on. Some people will say that age categories and genres are not the same thing, and I guess technically they aren't, but over time they have kind of merged. So for this reason, for this video, we will be assuming that age categories and genres are synonymous. If you're someone who follows my content regularly on TikTok, then you probably read a lot of YA and possibly a bit of adult fiction too. And in order to understand what new adult is and why it's important, we need to understand what young adult fiction and adult fiction are at their core. The term young adult is a little flexible, but the genre as a whole is typically marketed towards an age group ranging from 12 years old to about 18 years old. How the literary industry usually identifies a book's age range is by going off the age of the book's protagonist, or the book's main character. So if the main character is 16, it's young adult. If they're 20, it's adult. Themes often dictate the book's age range as well. Young adult novels almost always explore the matter of firsts. First time falling in love, first time going on an adventure, first time experiencing death, that sort of thing. I myself have read more than my weight in YA, and I get it. I love YA. It is my life's blood, but young adult fiction is called young adult fiction for a reason. It is written for readers who are much younger than I am, which means the writing, themes, and storyline are just not as complex as what you would read in an adult fiction novel, since when you are a teenager, you are just not going to be at the same reading comprehension level as an adult. And there definitely is YA that's more advanced, but the vast majority of it is catering toward that age range of 12 to 18. In much the same fashion we identify adult books. YA books are about firsts, adult books are often about seconds, thirds, fourths. The protagonist is aged over 18, they've already had their first love or their first adventure or their first death. The character is more seasoned and world-weary. The themes will probably be more graphic in terms of violence and other explicit content, and the writing will be much more complex. The problem surrounding all this is me. Well, not me specifically, but readers like me, and probably like you, who love YA and have read it way past the age of 18. I am a 23-year-old woman, and I have kept reading YA because I love the way that young adult authors write fantasy compared to adult authors. However, I often find myself unsatisfied with the plot complexity and writing level of young adult books. So I pick up an adult fantasy novel and the writing is much more my level. But the themes are just like what I mentioned before. The protagonist is more seasoned, they've already experienced life, and I'm just gonna say what everyone else is thinking. It's just not as exciting as YA. Adult fantasy is boring. Bite me, Tolkien. Don't get me wrong, if you are a young adult author, you should be writing for young adults. And if you are an adult author, you should be writing for adults. But the issue here is that there is an entire demographic of readers that are just a bit too old for YA, but just a bit too young for adult fiction that are being left behind. And that's where new adult comes in. New adult is a term that has been developed over the last 10 or so years and is used to describe books that blur the lines between YA and adult fiction. The writing is more complex, the plot is more developed, and the themes are a little more graphic than what you would find in a typical YA book. But it still retains some of the core elements of YA that keep the story feeling young and fresh. The protagonist is usually aged between 18 and 25. And the story focuses on content that appeals to that age range. So the beginnings of adulthood, finding your way in the world, discovering yourself. All in all, you'll get everything you'd usually find in a YA book, just with an older protagonist and probably a deeper psychological element and more graphic themes. Popular titles that fall into this new adult category include A Court of Thorns and Roses, Red, White and Royal Blue, A Darker Shade of Magic, and From Blood and Ash. But if you went into a bookstore and looked for these titles, you would find them in either the YA section or the adult section. And this is because new adult is not an officially recognized genre. It creates a unique marketing problem because, believe it or not, whether your book gets placed in young adult or adult can make a huge difference when it comes to achieving good sales. If the content of the book is more suited to YA readers, but its themes and characters line up with the adult genre and it gets placed in that section in bookstores, none of the intended audience is going to read it because they will only be looking in the YA section, right? When they search for recommendations online, they search for YA, so the book's not going to come across their computer screen. Furthermore, adult readers are likely to pass up the book because the content would be too young for them. So why is the industry fighting this? Why is new adult not an official genre? The most obvious reason that publishing companies reject this idea is because there apparently isn't a large enough readership for it. Marketing toward a completely new genre can involve a lot of effort and a lot of money. But if there isn't a demographic available to purchase the books being put out, nobody's going to be making a profit. Because a lot of traditional publishing houses refuse to market their books as new adult, many authors are turning to self-publishing, which has led to a lot of smaller agencies and indie publishing houses to accept the new adult genre and market under its name in order to grab those authors and their books. This is how the new adult genre has been able to establish itself without being officially recognized. Another reason new adult can be controversial: the sex. Like we discussed before, new adult takes elements from both YA and adult fiction, meaning there is a potential for more graphic writing while still dealing with YA adjacent characters and plots. This can bring up the issue of sexualizing minors, since in a lot of countries a person is still considered a minor until they are 20 or 21 years old. It also possibly leads to young readers, those aged under 18, having access to too graphic materials such as sex scenes. And though we bookworms all know we were reading that shit in middle school, you can imagine some parents wouldn't be too happy about it. My personal problem with new adult, and this is just a me thing, is also the sex. I'd say in the past 2 or so years, the new adult genre has become defined by sex, or as we more commonly refer to it as, smut or spice. New adult has sort of just become spicy YA, which is great if that's what you like to read. But there is just a tiny demographic of us who aren't into spice. And this is where it just gets personally frustrating. Because I love the idea of new adult because I get to read YA books but with more complex plots and writing. But spicy books just don't appeal to me. So I have to wade through the sea of smut to get to like the 2 sex-free books in the entire genre. However, like I said before, this is really just a me problem. And there's not really much anyone can do about it short of putting warning labels on books like they do for movies, but well, idea? Anyone? Possibly? All of this goes to show that the new adult genre is taking the book world by storm whether we want to make it official or not. If you were asking me, I would say that new adult is well on its way to becoming its own genre. Thanks to social media, in particular TikTok, its popularity has drastically increased, and publishing houses can no longer fall back on the excuse that there is no market for it. However, there is still a long way to go in terms of really defining the genre and what it entails. So there you have it, new adult, the genre that isn't a genre and why. There is a whole lot more to be said on this subject, but it would make for a really long video and ain't nobody got time for that. I mean, come on, we have books to read, authors to cancel, we are on a schedule here. Let me know down below in the comments what you think about this topic because I love hearing you guys' opinions and insights. If you don't already follow me on TikTok, go check that out. I post some pretty cool stuff on there and I will also leave a link to my Goodreads account down below so you can keep up with what I'm reading. Thanks for listening and I'll catch you later.